Thanks, everybody. I'd like to give a short update on the HADES workgroup. HADES stands for Health Analytics Data to Evidence Suite. And I'm guessing not everybody on the call knows what HADES is. So just a very brief introduction. HADES is a set of 24 R packages and counting. Some of you may have heard of the patient level prediction package or the cohort method package or the Cyclops or the SQL render package. So these are all part of HADES. All of these packages are implemented to perform analytics against data in the OMOP Common Data Model. And to get into HADES, a package needs to meet some minimum quality requirements. So we've set up continuous integration, which includes unit testing for our packages. They are, where possible, validated, documented. And also, very importantly, they are guaranteed, or well, we try to make them cross-database platform compatible. So no matter what database platform you're using, the HADES tools should run on them. I'd also like to point out that pretty much any OHDSI study at some point, I think, uses a HADES package, even if they don't know about it. A central repository of information on HADES is the HADES website. So I invite you all to go to this webpage. I'll also show you a little bit of the website in a second. So I'd like to split my update into basically two components, one on the developer community and how it's developing, and then updates on the software, the HADES software itself. So with respect to the developer community, I think a large focus has been on increasing our transparency. Just to give you some ideas of the efforts that we've been involved in. So we now have documents that document the requirements for how to, well, what a HADES package should meet at a minimum to be allowed into HADES. We already did, but still continue to do announcements of package releases on the OHDSI forums, and I'll show that in a second. We're making an effort to do better organizations of our issues. So the issues are where basically all of the feature requests and bug reports are collected. And so we try to organize those better in the hope of getting more people involved in HADES and taking on these issues and helping us resolve them. We've also tried to organize those issues into milestones to better give you an idea of what to expect in the near future of our HADES packages, and I'll show that in a second. And I've actually created a new dashboard on the HADES website where you can get an overview of all the milestones of all the HADES packages. Also, last but not least, this is not new, but we have monthly HADES meetings, and actually the next one will be this Thursday at noon Eastern time. So let me briefly take you to the HADES website. So this is the HADES website. As I was mentioning, we now have a specific page that documents the requirements for HADES packages. So that's something, if you're interested in having your package be included in HADES, you should definitely take a look at this. And I was also mentioning that the milestones, we now have a dashboard that tries to collect all of the milestones across the HADES packages. So these are all future releases that we are planning to do. We don't usually have a specific date associated with them, but at least you get a bit of an idea of what will be included in the next upcoming release of several of our packages. I also mentioned that we announce all of our releases on the OHDSI forum. So this is that page where you can see that every time there's a new version of a package, we announce it over here. So definitely also check that out. So that's the community side developments. So what have been recent software developments? Well, there have been lots of incremental improvements and bug fixes. Already a while ago, but I haven't mentioned it here, is that Hydra, which is what is used by Atlas to generate our study packages, it now uses RENV, with all of its skeletons, which basically means that it fixes the dependencies that a study uses. So that should increase our software stability a lot, so that our study packages will continue to run even if some of the dependencies change over time. Also not really that new, but also not mentioned here before, is that we now have a cohort generator package, which can be used to instantiate cohorts locally in your environment. We used to do that with a lot of custom code. The empirical calibration of max SPRT, which is something that we introduced in the UMAES project, is now actually being implemented and is ready for use by others who want to use it. So that's in the empirical calibration package. As Gautam was already mentioning, we now have the phenotype library package, which holds the phenotype library. And that, of course, works together with cohort generators. So you can use these two packages together to instantiate any of the cohorts that are defined in the phenotype library. So that's what we have been working or have already released. There are some things in the works that are nearly done or are going to be released pretty soon. One to mention is the cohort method version 5. Some of the developments is that we've have now made it so that it scales up to ridiculous cohort sizes. This was needed for our COVID vaccine studies, where we have like 8 million, 9 million people in an exposure cohort, and the software still had to run in a fast enough for us to not lose our patients. It allows for more per outcome customization options. Also, something that you heard Patrick already talk about a little bit, we've introduced go, no-go diagnostics in cohort method. So if your covariate balance fails, that basically comes up as a red flag now. And also not unimportant, the cohort method package will be fully controllable via JSON input specs, and more on that, why we do that later. So feature extraction, an upcoming version will have cohort-based covariates. So in the past, covariates were always just based on concepts that occurred in the data in the common data model. But now, a lot of people had to create custom covariates with lots of nasty custom code that was very difficult to write. And so now it will be possible to just create a new cohort and use that basically as a covariate for another cohort. And one of the immediate use cases for that is to create a what we call a table 1, which is a standard overview of characteristics of a cohort that is completely based on features created with this cohort-based covariate approach. And of course, the cohorts that we'll use for that will come from the phenotype library. So instead of just using the code for diabetes, for example, we'll use the cohort for instead of using the concept for diabetes to create the covariate, we'll create the cohort for diabetes and use that to create the covariates in this table 1. A shout out to Adam Black, who's been working on Andromeda and switching out the backend, which is currently using SQLite, to a new backend using Arrow. That's not yet finished, but I've been playing around with it, and it's like crazy fast compared to the SQLite backend. So that will also give us a big performance boost across most of the HADES packages. Adam is also looking at database connector and seeing whether we can switch out the current JDBC backend to a DBI backend. From my vantage point, the main reason for that is that we don't have to maintain all of those drivers ourselves. But also another bonus of that might be that we can support the DB plier interface for interacting with data. But that's still a little bit of in an exploratory phase, if you ask me, but certainly very exciting developments. Last but not least, Adam and Martin are exploring the use of the targets package to improve OHDSI analytics workflow. That again is more of an exploratory endeavor, but we might actually start using that at some point. One thing I'd specifically like to highlight is Strategus, and that's a new development, a rather major development in HADES, where we try to make it so that you can go from analysis specifications directly to results without actually having to write any R code. And it should also be possible to combine various analytics into a single study. For example, if you want a study that does cohort generation, cohort diagnostic, characterization, estimation, and prediction, you should be able to just write a single set of analysis specs, execute that as a single study. That would also mean that if you're doing an OHDSI network study, the thing that you would be sharing would be these JSON specs instead of R code. But of course, still having the flexibility that if you do need to do custom bleeding edge stuff, we're OHDSI after all, you should still be able to do that within the Strategus framework. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of how Strategus will work. So as I mentioned, it's specifications on the left-hand side, which basically breaks down into analysis specifications. So those are things that are defining your study, like what are the cohorts, what do you want to do with them, what type of analysis do you want to perform. And then you have execution settings. So these are things specific to your environment. So how do I connect to the database server? Where can I find the data in common data model format, etc. And those together go into the Strategus package. This will then launch multiple modules that may or may not talk to the common data model and things like cohort tables, and will then produce results as zipped CSV files because we still want to share them between sites. But then you eventually can upload them to a database and have a modular Shiny app view those results. So that hopefully will be our new approach to doing most of our studies. And that's why, as I mentioned in cohort method, for example, we want to have this paradigm where sure you can use R, but you can also have JSON specs go in and have CSV files come out. All right, and that was in a nutshell my HADES update. Thanks.